woman. That is not a woman.
Can I ask you a question?
That is not a woman.
Can I ask you a
Do you
question?
have ovaries?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go on then ask me a question.
What's that?
Ask me a question.
Are you a biologist?
Oh my God, don't be ridiculous. No, I'm not a vet, but I know what a dog is.
That absolutely irresistible accent, that irrepressible attitude. I'm not a vet, but I know what a dog is. And that's not a woman. That's a guy in a swimming leotard. It used to be funny. It used to be Austin Powers. That man, that woman, it's a man. Today it's serious business. There's one person fighting. Sometimes it feels as if there's only one person fighting. She has a nom de guerre, a nom de plume. It's Posie Parker. But to her friends, behind closed doors, in a classified environment, she is Kellie-Jay Keen. Kellie-Jay, welcome back to America First.
Why, thank you so much for having me.
I have a bone to pick with you. You came to the swamp and you didn't tell me. You didn't want me at your rally at the Lincoln Memorial. How dare you? How dare you come to my manor and not invite me to your event? What brings you to America, my dear?
I am doing a tour called Let Women Speak, which is exactly what it says on the tin. It's basically creating a space in which women can speak in public. The old-fashioned public square, because the modern public square censors everything we say.
All right, is that why you didn't invite me? Because I'm a man.
Well, you could have come because there were plenty of trans activists trying to stop us talking. So you would have been very, very welcome. I'm so sorry.
All right, that's all right. I'm just ribbing you a little bit because I'm a huge fan of yours and I can't believe you're on this side of the pond and I didn't get to see you in person. The website is standingforwomen.com. First things first, for those who haven't, for some reason, because they've been trapped under a rock or sleeping like Rip Van Winkle, who didn't see that viral video, tell us where that occurred and who you were talking about when it comes to your comment, "I'm not a vet, but I know what a dog is."
Well, I was actually talking to a trans activist, a woman who frequently takes her shirt off to reveal her double mastectomy scars as sort of a badge of honor. And we were in poolside watching Will Thomas, who calls himself Leah Thomas, race against women. So not only racing against women in sport, in swimming races, but also changing with them and getting naked, and no women were allowed to talk about it. And I just thought, I did shout, "He's a man," when he was accepting sort of his podium chat. So I was there to point out that the emperor was naked and actually had a penis.
Yeah, it was naked and he had a penis. All right. For those who missed our prior chats and haven't kept up with what's happening across the pond, first things first, follow this lady, Kellie-Jay Keen, a.k.a. Posie Parker. She's got a superb YouTube channel, but the website is standingforwomen.com. She's got some amazing merchandise as well. I don't know if she got permission from my former boss, President Trump, to have a red hat with white lettering on it, as our good buddy Brendan O'Neill wears. As soon as we've got it ready, Eric will show it on the screen because it's a rather cool hat. But first things first, tell us your backstory. So what did you do for a living and why did you decide to pick up this mantle or this mission of fighting for women's rights in the true sense of being a feminist?
Well, couple of things. I didn't really do anything for a living. I raised my 4 kids. So
you mean the most important job any human being can have? You mean that nothing, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, it was it's delightful, and I've got really nice children, so it has actually paid off. But I came across this in about 2015, and what I came across is men basically LARPing as women in women's forums online. And once I raised a question about it, I realized that I wasn't allowed to talk about it. These men were well defended. These women.
Hang on. Let's go back a bit. So let's break this down. So you're online, you're on for women, and then you can work out that there are men who are pretending to be women. Back then, when you're waking up to this issue in 15. Are these people having a laugh, or is this the tip of the spear of the trans insanity? Who are these men who are pretending to be women when you started realizing what's going on?
Well, in old money, they were transvestites, and they were older men who seemed to be aroused by themselves dressed as women. And, you know, they used to be called transvestites, and people were sort of accepting, if not really wanting to participate, but people accepted that some men did that, and we'd rather they kept it at home. But, you know, it was no big deal. But these men were actually calling themselves women, and interloping into women-only spaces, and women were fawning about all over them and saying things like, "Oh, your makeup's so amazing. I wish I had your legs," and just really bizarre, really weird behavior. And so I said to one of these men one day, "Are you sure you identify as a woman?" Because this was like the language that everybody was using. And not only did he get really aggressive, but so did loads of women in his defense. And at that point, I just thought, there's something going on. I'm not really having this. I will not be told that I have to pretend that 65-year-old man is a woman.
All right. Well, it's a great British tradition. Transvestites are a massive British tradition, whether it's pantomime or Monty Python. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about something far, far more serious. So when you saw that and you saw real women defending, I love the word you use there, the interlopers, what did you start doing? What was your reaction? What did you set up? And then what was the response to you? And tell us about some of the things the establishment did to Posie Parker.
Well, my journey is long. So I just started tweeting about it and talking about it. And then in 2018, I made the Times because I was interviewed under caution by the police for saying it was wrong to castrate a 16-year-old boy. So a woman who runs a charity over here called Mermaids took her son to Thailand and had him castrated. Sex reassignment surgery, I think they euphemistically call it, but had him castrated and his penis sliced and inserted.
And let me just stop you there. This is a woman who in the media in the UK was celebrated. I mean, she was celebrated for taking her minor son abroad to Asia and having him castrated. I'm not exaggerating here, am I? Can you back me up?
No, it was for his 16th birthday. I mean, I have 16-year-old boys and they wanted PlayStations. So, you know, we have quite a different family setup to her. But it's, she's been celebrated. She's led a lot of the narrative. She campaigns and puts things in children's schools that has really started this propagation of lies and coercive control of children through gaslighting. So she said, you know, that whole charity is has a pretty dangerous mission. So I then made the news, and then because of that, I became somewhat, considered courageous and brave just for continually speaking the truth, which in itself is preposterous.
And let's be just clear for those who aren't familiar with the British terminology. So the police cautioned you. So the authorities, law enforcement officers, reacted to you saying that it's wrong to castrate a 16-year-old on social media, correct?
Yeah, it was hate speech. So I didn't actually receive a caution. I was interviewed under caution, which is when they sort of read you your rights. And at the end of that, they decide whether or not to charge you. And in my case, they decided not to charge me. And then I had to go through all of that again when Susie Green, who'd reported me in the first place, wasn't particularly happy about it. But it was malicious communications, hate speech, public order act of nuisance. It was a big old list for just 6 tweets. And then I was due to speak with some lefty feminists. I don't call myself a feminist anymore. I probably did back in 2018, but I've since decided that it's not useful and not remotely accurate to my aims when it comes to liberating women from this particular aggressive and pernicious cult of transgenderism. So I don't feel that feminist really is broad enough, invites enough women in.
We'll break that down in a moment because I think that's a fascinating issue, that decision that you've taken. We're talking to Kellie-Jay Keen, aka Posie Parker. The website is standingforwomen.com. Please support this lady. She is a modern Joan of Arc. She is fighting for actual women, real women. and the rights of young girls as well. Can we just think about that for a second? Her YouTube channel is a must subscribe as well, standingforwomen.com. I'm Sebastian Gorka. This is America First, coming to you from the relieffactor.com studios. Don't forget, if you want to make sure you never miss any of our long-form interviews, you go to Spotify, you plug in my name, Sebastian Gorka, America First. You never ever miss a minute. You leave us a 5-star review because it helps, and share the links with your friends. And don't forget our merchandise, everything made in America. The latest is the sweatshirt you guys designed. I'm an American, no apologies. Then there's the FBI mug as well, Biden's Gestapo. Go to sebgorkastore.com, sebgorkastore.com. While we're talking about merchandise, let's put our buddy Brendan O'Neill's face up on the screen. We love Brendan as well. And on his Instagram, this is the hat he's wearing in his profile. I think I've seen that color scheme before. It's reminiscent of something. What is it? Oh, yeah, MAGA, Make America Great Again. But this is Posie's design. It's Make Women Female Again. Oh, my gosh. I need one of those hats. Make Women Female Again. All right, so I interrupted you there. Let's talk about, I called you an old school feminist. You said you've since changed your take on that. I hate labels in general, but talk to us about your decision and why today, given this transgender extremism, you don't call yourself a feminist, Kellie-Jay.
Well, there's so many reasons not to label oneself a feminist these days. Number one, it's because many people who do are actually pro prostitution and trans women or men in women's spaces. But also I found that it's quite limiting. So I don't want any woman to come across this issue and feel it's not about her because it's being, there's some gatekeeping by using the term feminist. I also have a real issue with feminism and motherhood and feel that feminism really, in order to free women from the sort of shackles of the household, which only middle-class women were in anyway, but in order to do that, they sort of divorced women from motherhood. And, 4/5 of the world's women are mothers. So there's many, many reasons not to limit myself, but they are just some of them. Plus, I kept being told by women on the left, in particular, of which I was one until 2015, that I wasn't doing feministing right. And so all the time, it's like, you can't be a feminist because you're married to a man, or you're staying home with your children, or you're some sort of traitor to your sex class. And so I was like, okay, fine, I won't be a feminist. Great. All right, bye-bye.
Good for you. All right, let's go back to your original awakening to the issue in 2015. You saw these boards where, men who were transvestites were LARPing, as you say, and then women were encouraging them. So let me ask you to dissect this in the last 7 years. Have you divined, is there an overarching reason? Because this is the thing that blows my mind, because being a woman is truly unique. What women can do, men can never do. I mean, it's biology, it's nature, it's essence. Why would women be congratulating these frauds, these interlopers? You said they egged them on. They were so proud of them, saying, oh, what lovely legs you have. As a guy, why are women, real biological women, doing that? Is it just to be trendy and cool, or is there something darker and deeper? Have you found some reason for this insanity from the side of women?
Well, I've thought about this long and hard and often, and I've sort of come to this conclusion that if we look at evolutionary biology and we look at the role that men and women play in family and social groups, and I believe that we survive better as a species in social groups. So there's got to be a component to women and men that sort of gives them the correct role in securing a social group for the survival of the species. And I just wonder whether what women do is, and this has gone wrong in this case, you might even call it toxic femininity, but what women have done in this case is they have chosen to try and be cohesion between people by constantly being accepting and kind. And in this case, they've put women last in order to be accepting and kind of these men. And so I wonder if it's something to do with that women also virtue signal by talking about how kind and accepting and
This is what Jordan Peterson calls the fact, that women are agreeable. So they're trying to be agreeable to these interlopers, is what you're saying.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not one of them. I've never I've never been accused of being agreeable. That's for sure.
We would love you if you were agreeable, because we need warriors like you. So tell us what has happened in the UK, because we have it here. You were there at that swim event. You called out that guy who's a woman. So we're fighting our own battles here. The federal government is just absolutely destroying Title IX, no protection for young girls. It is a travesty. It is the antithesis of what the feminist movement said they were doing. But what has been the reaction to you in the UK? You were questioned under caution by the police. Do you have supporters? We see every now and again the story flares up with J.K. Rowling. So what's the situation in the UK right now? Or what's your experience been since you started?
So I put a billboard up with a dictionary definition of the word woman. That seemed to sort of break a bit of a watershed for what we can say. And
the definition was, for those who haven't seen the billboard, was woman equals
human female.
Adult human female. Nice. Yes, it's pretty much that simple. So you put the billboard up, and what happened afterwards?
Well, that was taken down, and it was taken down for hate speech. And Prime Site is the organisation that decided to capitulate to the men having a bit of a petty tantrum about women being able to say what a woman is. So we kind of knew that was, when I put it up, I knew that we were going to provoke this reaction. I thought that, hey, everyone will talk about it. And then we're like, oh, my goodness, that's so terrible. And of course, a woman's an adult human female, and the war will be over and women will be saved. And actually, it's just got worse and worse, worse and worse. As in, more institutions are ideologically captured. The police, the NHS, school system, like schools are just indoctrinating kids on this all the time. It's pretty terrifying. So whilst that's happening, at the same time as we know that more institutions are ideologically captured, we are raising the awareness, and more people, general public, are understanding just exactly what the issues are. And it's not about a vulnerable minority fighting their own sort of version of a civil rights movement. Yeah. It is basically entitled, mostly heterosexual men, entitled and invading women's spaces and trying to diminish what it actually means to be a woman.
That's the bottom line, diminishing what it means to be a woman. We're talking to Posie Parker, real name Kellie-Jay. Subscribe to her channel on YouTube. And don't forget that this is an international phenomena. Please support her. Let's put her URL up there. Eric, let's put the URL up there. And don't forget that we are also on all social media, bar the fascistic YouTube. So please follow us as well. We are on Truth Social, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Parler, Gedda, you name it, Clout Hub. But most important is our recent acquisition of our Substack site. That's sebastiangorka.substack.com. That's sebastiangorka.substack.com. So you said something fascinating about the people that you're pushing against in the UK, that they're transvestites for the most part, or just heterosexual guys dressing up as women and faking it and pretending to be women. There's an interesting facet of all of this insanity here in America that I'll use, for want of a better phrase, old school homosexuals having a serious issue with the transgender movement, not just because it mutilates young boys and literally castrates them, but because their argument is these young boys who are maybe fey or a little bit feminine are probably going to grow up to be homosexual men, and you're trying to make that disappear by turning them into fake girls. What do you think of this argument, and have you seen evidence of that?
I absolutely have seen evidence of that. Now, this was happening to lesbians in the 90s, that some lesbians were getting their breasts removed and pretending to be men. It's been going on a lot longer than I think most of us understand. But of course, if you genuinely fought for gay and lesbian rights in the 70s and 80s and watched those successes, I can't imagine how depressing it is now to see people saying that basically you can transition into being straight by pretending to be the opposite sex. And we know this is happening. Like I did an event in Chicago, and I was escorted home the very next day back to my hotel by one of the city ambassadors. And he asked me what I was doing, and I said, and he said, oh, there was a protest, there was a rally. And there were some protesters, and I said, "Oh yeah, that was me." And he said, "Oh, I was under the understanding that you were this evil, bigoted woman." And I said, "Oh no, and I'm just trying to do sort of protect children's bodies from being harmed." And he said, "Oh, we don't do that." I said, "Oh yes, you do. In this country, you will slice off the breasts of a 13-year-old girl who says she's a boy." And he said, "No, we don't. We definitely don't do that." And I was like, "Yes, you do. And in Oregon, you can get it done at 15 without your parents' consent."
Right.
And so there is a fundamental, I think, because of the left kind of mainstream media narratives, people don't understand what's going on. They don't know that children are being surgically altered and being sterilized and having their sexual function completely eradicated in teenage years before they've even had a sort of a romantic partner or anything. And he also didn't know that there are literal rapists, men, in women's prisons, then raping women in prison.
Because they're pretending to be women and getting locked up with the female prisoners and then getting them pregnant.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to differentiate too much between the men that just say that just say for sort of 10 minutes that they're a woman, or men that sort of pretend for 5 years and earnestly mean it. As far as I'm concerned, if you are born male, you grow up to be a man, and there is absolutely nothing you can do about it. And so I like to be really, really firm on the idea that whether you pretend that you're a woman and you end up in a woman's prison, or whether you do it just because you want to end up in a woman's prison, I don't really see the difference, because the punishment for those women having to share a cell with a man is absolutely just repulsive. How are you supposed to be rehabilitated and be a good member of society if you spend 5 years absolutely petrified you're going to get raped?
Well, the person who escorted you home, maybe they should just look at Instagram, because every single day you can see hundreds, if not thousands, of posts of young women who are actually baring their chests to show the scars of their breast removal, because they think that's what makes them a man. Absolutely shocking. Wake up, America. Do what this lady is doing. Go right now to standingforwomen.com. That's standingforwomen.com, and follow her YouTube channel. We're talking to Kellie-Jay Keen, a.k.a. Posie Parker. I'm Sebastian Gorka. This is America First, coming to you live from the ReliefFactor.com studio. I need a little bit of help now here. Will you please assist me, Kellie-Jay? Because now and again, I follow the UK press. For some reason, the bloody Daily Mail gets scoops on American political stories before anybody else actually in America does. So, but I don't follow British culture as closely as I did when I lived there. So will you unpack for me, just out of curiosity, what's the truth about the whole J.K. Rowling thing? Is she on the side of the angels? Does she believe that chromosomes are non-negotiable? Or did she just fall foul of her fans? Where does that whole issue stand now? Is she a factor in all of this, or is that just a little storm in a teacup?
I think she is a remarkable woman who finally just decided to speak up. I think so I have a friend called Magdalene Burns who sadly passed away a few years ago, and Rowling looked at one of her tweets and liked it, and then she withdrew that when people noticed, and then she did something else, and then she withdrew because people noticed, and then I think she got so badly attacked by the trans activists that she was like, okay, I might as well be hung for a mutton. Might as well be hung for a sheep rather than a lamb. So she's gone all out, and I don't blame her. She's still not quite as far along the journey as probably I am, because I just refuse to call anybody anything other than a man if they're a man. But you know, she's an incredible asset to this side of the fight. But it's all preposterous because everybody knows it's not true.
All right. Well, I'm glad to hear that because that's a woman with huge influence. So, will you also tell us a little bit about, because we don't have that phraseology here, what is a mermaid? Explain the whole mermaid thing. And then, how significant is it? I made her draw in breath there. I don't know why that question was a dodgy one. And then secondly, how significant is it that I think maybe earlier this year the Tavistock clinic shut down that was doing all these transgender surgeries in the UK? So tell us about those two things.
So Mermaids is an organisation, so called, I would imagine, because below the waist they are not recognisably human. I have no idea why they are called mermaids, but it's bizarre, and it's always a lot of these organisations, you know, even rainbows and this sort of pink and pastel, pink and blue pastel colours of the trans flag. It's all a little bit grooming, as far as I'm concerned.
Because of the childish themes that are attractive to children.
Yeah, unicorns, gingerbread. There's all of these sort of mechanisms that are used in order to deliver a certain sort of message. I think you'd have to be have no understanding of PR whatsoever if you didn't understand the messaging.
And the Mermaids are is a pro-trans organization.
Yes, so they are a pro-trans child organization. So what they do is they go into schools and they promote the idea of they have a graph that's jelly babies, and it goes from sort of G.I. Joe, which is a black jelly baby, to a Barbie pink jelly baby, and you have to pick where you are on the spectrum depending on your likes and dislikes. And children are sort of lied to and told that gender identity is something that's important. Now, in my view, the word gender needs to go. I think it's undefinable.
Yeah.
I think it's a ridiculous idea. I think we should just use the word sex, meaning biological sex, and I think everything else is just ludicrous. You know, I'm 5'1", so I'm a 5'1" woman, and I'm sure that my personality is kind of fits exactly what my physical body requires and is appropriate. You know, if I was this forceful and I was 6 foot, I probably would be unbearable. Like anyway.
No. You'd be the host of a radio show in America.
But you know, it's just the idea that our personalities and who we are is not inextricably linked to our bodies is ridiculous. Yeah. So that's kind of what Mermaids does.
And then the shutting down of the Tavistock clinic that was doing all these surgeries on kids. How big a deal is that?
Well, that's a really big deal. And what they've done is so it could be two things, to be honest, Sebastian. It could be either that they are going to shut it down for the PR move of not being accountable and not having this particular place that can be criticised and targeted. So that would be my unfavourable kind of interpretation of it. And then they push it out to the regions where everything is a little more accessible. Or my more cynical self is saying that they've done that because then you've got different and tighter budgets when it comes to regions. So if you're running a regional budget and you've got people with cancer or people with requiring heart surgery or other sort of complicated or chronic illnesses, or you've got somebody who wants puberty blockers or their breast removed on the NHS, then I think we'll make budgetary decisions based upon that. And I think that breast removal and all types of this ideological medicalization will go so far down the pecking order that it just won't be addressed, and maybe we'll just have counselling. That's me being sort of cynical, but the NHS has stopped giving puberty blockers to under 16s.
What is the end state of all this? For me, one of the kind of Damascene moments when the scales fell from my eyes was when I read James Lindsay's Cynical Theories book, one of the guys who's done the most work on this here. And he has a chapter on queer theory, which is the genesis of all of this stuff. And his summation of queer theory, when he's quoting the queer theorists from their own papers, is they write, our objective is to make the word normal non-intelligible, that normal doesn't mean anything, and to normalize abnormal. Is that the end state of all this lunacy? What's your take?
Well, I think there is a destruction of the family. I think there is a creation of chaos. I think that there are things within queer theory, like queering the classroom, for example, where a man in the UK who was responsible for a backlash against LGBT in a Birmingham primary school, and the backlash was from Muslim parents who were having none of their kids. They did not want them to be told that they had a gender identity and all these other bizarre, nonsensical adult themes. They didn't want anything like that pushed upon their kids. And so queer theory is all about everyone having a sexual identity, including children. Yeah. And you've got people like Kinsey, who was closely linked to, who's that awful man who died recently and got buried? The guy who ran Playboy.
Hugh Hefner.
Yeah, he was involved with Kinsey, and he sort of put Brooke Shields, I think, when she was a child, he put in a pornographic photo shoot. So we just have to be mindful that there's many things at play here. One of them is absolute incompetence and cowardice.
Yeah.
And stupidity. So that's most people that are involved in pushing this are
it's
incompetent and cowards.
It's important. Incompetence is an explanation for a lot of things. Yeah, I think we have to do a special on Kinsey to explore the damage that one man did. I'm Sebastian Gorka. This is America First One-on-One, coming to you from the ReliefFactor.com studios. So before I ask my last question of you, I need to know where the heck you are sitting, because those Star Wars posters of the Millennium Falcon and the X-Wing are very cool. Where are you, Kellie-Jay?
I am in Orlando at the moment, so I came down for a couple of days break with my son before I finish this tour, which I'm doing, which is not just letting women speak, but also making a documentary about women's voices in this particular struggle.
I cannot wait to see the documentary. I Am a Woman, I think, is the working title. We'll have you back on the show when that launches. But whose posters are those? Those are so cool.
These are just in the house, so it's a phenomenal little house. There's a Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse room. There's a Harry Potter room, and then this is the little Star Wars lounge.
I need a Star Wars lounge. Hey, put on camera too, guys. Let's show everybody who's watching us my Millennium Falcon. My parents didn't have enough money for me to have one of these as a kid, so now I bought myself one, right? Because I can. All right, I'm not playing with it. It's decoration, guys, all right? But it's one of the originals. I'm so excited. Okay, back to business, Gorka. So you are really, I mean this sincerely, hand on heart. You're an inspiration. You're a fighter. You remind me of my wife, who left the house on Tuesday at 3:30 in the morning and came back at 10 o'clock at night after spending the whole day as a senior election official for the elections, even though she hates politics but wanted to make sure that it wasn't stolen. So you're cut of the same cloth, both of you. Will you send a message to our 3 million listeners right now and everybody else who's watching on video and social media and who'll see this? Everybody has a role to play. Everybody can fight for the vulnerable, for the girls, for the young boys. What is your message to those who say, oh, that's an interesting interview, but it's irrelevant to me and it doesn't change my life? What do you say to them in terms of their role in this true war for the most vulnerable?
I think if we look at what's happening in schools, there are so many victims of this in schools. There's the children that are coerced into believing that they're the opposite sex. And I do think that actually transitioning children is a profound abuse. Yeah. And so there's those children, they're an obvious victim because those girls are going to end up having their breasts removed. And then by the time they're 20, they could easily regret it. And then they've got a lifetime of regret, which also involves themselves. So they can also find blame with themselves. Now, I don't think they're to blame if they do it as a child at all. I think anyone that gets sucked into this cult is a victim of it, but I still understand the way that human beings work and they would take blame. Then you've got the children in the classroom who have to pretend that they can't see and name the things that are in front of them. Yeah. And I do wonder what the legacy of that harm will be when they're adults, when they don't have any personal boundaries because they haven't been able to speak clear truth on a daily basis. So I do think that's quite overwhelming. And I think as individuals and citizens of supposedly a free country, And don't get me started on what I think about the right to be heard as well as the right to free speech, because I don't think you have it. But when it comes to the children, like, it's really sappy, but children literally are our future.
Yeah.
And at the moment, what we're doing to them is we are telling them that the ground upon which they stand is not firm and can change depending on who is standing upon it. So I really think if you don't think this is your business, if fundamental access to truth is not your business, then maybe you're living in the wrong country.
Ooh, harsh but fair, as we say. That's why we love her so much. Next time in the swamp in studio. But have fun with your son in Orlando. It's Friday. Let's close, because it is a fight, and we never give up, with the words of my former boss, President Trump.
We will not bend. We will not break. We will not yield. We will never give in. We will never give up. We will never back down. We will never, ever surrender. My fellow Americans, our movement is far from over. In fact, our fight has only just begun.